With the Speaker of the House impasse resolved, House Republicans went to work yesterday quickly adopting the new rules package negotiated during the Speaker election process last week. Now, these rules create a more transparent process that will allow Republicans to curb spending, confront Democrats regarding the debt limit, and investigate the abuses of the Biden administration. Now, this also paves the way for Republicans in the House to immediately move meaningful legislation forward. Week one, this week, the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act, a measure that Nancy Pelosi and her party blocked 80 times. What other measures will we see in the coming days from the Republicans in the House? Join me now to discuss this, House Majority Leader Steve Scalise. He serves on the House Energy and Commerce Committees as well. He represents the 1st Congressional District of Louisiana. Congressman Scalise, welcome back to the program.
Hey, Tony, it's great to be back with you, and especially good to be back in the majority with Nancy Pelosi fired.
Well, let me congratulate you on your new position as the House Majority Leader. You've already announced the agenda moving forward, and I want to get to that. But first, I want you to touch on the new House rules package that was passed last night. There were some doubters, but Speaker McCarthy delivered. The leadership followed through on what they committed to last week. Why is this so important?
Yeah, Tony, why this is so important, and you saw the debate last week, is a debate that's been going on for a few months now, is Washington is broken. It's fundamentally broken. We needed to change the way that Washington works to empower members of Congress to actually fight for the people who are struggling out there, standing up against so many of these far left radical agenda items that have created all the inflation, the energy costs, an open border. And so we had a lot of back and forth conversations with members how best to do it. But frankly, this is a debate that's been years in the making. I think people who watched last week were encouraged that they heard real debate on how Washington should work better. And, you know, the Democrats were going nuts. The left was going nuts, as was the media, because they knew this meant that their party was over. These, thousands of pages of bills, of omnibus spending bills, $1.7 trillion, dropped by dark of night, voted on the next day where nobody has a chance to read it, all kind of unrelated items that have nothing to do with basic government funding. That's the kind of stuff people have been sick of for a long time, Tony. And we had to get the rules right. And we spent a few days to do it. But ultimately, spending a few days to fix what's broken with Washington so that we can spend the next 2 years fighting so that Washington can stand up for the people who are struggling across America is refreshing. It's something that needed to happen a long time ago, and I'm glad we got it done and passed last night.
I want to play a clip of the minority leader, Hakeem Jeffries. He had this remark this weekend. Play clip number 3.
And while the Congress was held captive this particular time, what is going to be a problem is if the American people will be held captive over the next 2 years to the extreme MAGA Republican agenda that apparently has been negotiated into the House rules and the functioning of the Congress.
Steve, you set the agenda as the Republican leader. You've already put out there, before we even had the debate last week over the Speaker, what the priorities were going to be. Is this MAGA Republican agenda? It's an agenda that the American people supported Republicans and put them in charge to carry out.
Yeah, in fact, if anybody was held hostage, it was families who were watching every month with crushing $1 trillion bills here and $1 trillion bills there, money borrowed from China, tax increases, regulations, open borders, families paying more at the grocery store for everything, higher energy costs. That's what's been crushing families. And it's the left who did it, the extremists on the far left, President Biden, Nancy Pelosi on down. And look, they're going to kick back. I can understand, when the American people finally rejected that far left extremist ideology and said, we want Republicans to have the majority in the House to finally stop this madness. I can understand that these far leftists are going to push back. But you know what? We're going to push back too, because we're fighting for those families who have been left behind.
But they also benefit from the rules themselves by having a more open process. So I'm not quite sure what they're complaining about when they talk about these new rules. These new rules take the power from the Speaker, which Nancy Pelosi grabbed for herself, and it devolves to the individual members.
Yeah, and this really gets to the heart of the differences between conservatives and big government socialists. They want power centralized. They wanted all the power bottlenecked into Nancy Pelosi's office, where, again, multi-thousand-page bills were written by dark of night. You know, you remember Obamacare, the infamous, you got to pass the bill to find out what's in it. We found out what's in it. It's things that dramatically increase costs on families. It denied health care to millions of people who had plans that they liked. You know, if you like your plan, you can keep it. That promise and lie was broken to so many people. And so changing that relationship between Washington and the rest of America has needed to happen for a long time. And that's what the rules package does. If Democrats want to be a part of helping fix the problems they created, they now have the ability to file amendments too. You know, but we were shut out of the process. You talked about the Born Alive Act at the outset. And Tony, this is a bill that you've helped lead on to raise public awareness nationally. And Wagner's bill, where we tried over and over again, like you said, 80 times, Nancy Pelosi said no. And so we weren't able to bring a bill that says if a baby's born alive outside the womb, you can't kill that baby and call it abortion. It's murder. And yet now we're finally bringing that bill to the House floor tomorrow. We'll have a vote. I hope every Democrat votes for it. They should. But frankly, whether they vote for it or not, we're going to pass that bill. We're going to fight for those unborn. We're going to fight for our most vulnerable, and we're going to actually give a voice to members of Congress who have been shut out of this process for way too long.
And it shows a stark contrast between the priorities of the two parties, that Nancy Pelosi wouldn't even allow a vote on this over 80 times. But also last night, one of the first bills that you voted on pertained to the IRS and the fact that they're putting 87,000 agents out there. And it's interesting, data now come to the forefront that if you're in the lower economic income status, you're 5 times more likely to be audited. Is that what the Biden administration wants to further harass hardworking men and women?
Yeah, and then look, this was their agenda from day one. When they said they wanted to more than double the size of the IRS, just think about that. You know, there's about 80,000 people working at the IRS today. I have never gotten one phone call in my years in Congress of anybody asking me to add more people to the IRS. I get a lot of people saying we'd like more Border Patrol agents, but to say let's go from 80,000 to 167,000 IRS agents and allowing them to go after not the millionaires and the billionaires, it's going to be small business owners. It's going to be the single mom working 2 shifts at a restaurant. That's
right.
Who they wanted to go after. We had an amendment, by the way, to say that those new agents couldn't go after those lower income families. And every Democrat voted against it because they want to generate billions of new taxes to spend on far left socialist items at the expense of these hardworking families. Enough is enough. We passed the bill. Not a single Democrat voted with us, but we passed it to the Senate. So call your senator. If you want to say, hey, we don't need another 87,000 IRS agents, maybe let's put those people over at the border, securing our border.
Right.
Call your senator, because the bill's over there now. And Chuck Schumer said he doesn't want to bring it up. Call your senator and ask him to stand up and vote and bring that bill to the floor.
Again, another sharp contrast between the priorities of the two parties. Steve Scalise, I know you have to go. Busy day for you. Thank you so much for taking time out. Looking forward to seeing this conservative agenda advance in the House. And you know what?
It's a new day, Tony. God bless
is.
America. And thanks for all you do to help promote having the changes that we finally got. Now let's go do the work fighting for those families who have been struggling for way too long.
All right. Steve Scalise, thanks so much for being with us.